Boys.
Libos.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week.
A little bit old.
We're that deep into Danny Roll. Please don't clip that.
Been truly horrific having this season away from home.
I want to go!
Anyone would think that we rehearse this, and I guarantee that we haven't.
How poor do we have to be before it's happening? How much blood from this stone do we have to get?
For Wednesday Week!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week's Matchday Preview Show, where we catch up with representatives from our upcoming opponents to look at what we can expect in our next outing. Now, following yesterday's disappointing result against early Championship favourites Burnley, we've got a chance to get back to winning ways this Tuesday as we welcome Swansea to Hillsborough. And I'm delighted this evening to be welcomed welcome Luke from the Swanscast podcast to this week's episode of
Hello from the other side.
Honestly, if Adele knew what we were doing with her songs, she'd be carking out some royalties. Luke, how you doing, mate? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. I mean, same for us in terms of results. A bit disappointing, but other than that, yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into it. I think we've got the Spider-Man meme of one Spider-Man pointing at the other. And I think that might be us over the next sort of 20-25 minutes when we get into the details of how our seasons are going. Obviously, first question, just an opportunity to start us off by giving us a quick overview of the expectations as a Swansea fan, as a club, as a fan base coming into the season.
Expectations, I think it's fair to say, are just have a more stable season and maybe improve a bit from last season. We've got Luke Williams in now for a full year. He came in January, so he managed to steer the club to a 14th place finish where we were last season. After a bit of a turbulent time, we had Michael Duff in charge. He left. It didn't quite work out for him. He kind of tried to play a different way to what we used to, and it didn't really suit the fan base and what they were after. And I think if you're going to make that sort of change that perhaps fans don't necessarily want or are a little bit unsure of, you need to bring results, and he didn't. And he also didn't bring any, let's just say he didn't help himself in the media a lot of the time. So yeah, it just didn't work out. So we had three managers over the course of the season with an interim between Duff and Luke Williams, who we've got now. And we finished 14th. Some of the season, though, it looked like we were in danger of potential relegation battle, but I think the end of the season looked a lot safer than that in the end. So that was 14th, and I believe for us, that's the minimum this season. I personally expect us to be around the same sort of area. I think I put us 12th in my predictions, so a little bit of an improvement with a year of stability. But we need to be building towards improving, I think, in the longer term. And that's what I would like to see. Now, there's a few questions, perhaps, of whether we're going the right way at the moment. But then at the same time, maybe we need to be more patient. You know, they're trying one thing and it might not be working at its best right now. But maybe they need more time. But it's easy to say that in the long run. But when it's happening in front of you, it's frustrating. So we're kind of in the middle of the moment. We are sitting 13th, to be fair. So maybe we're where we should be in terms of expectations. I think the most of the frustration that we're having at the moment is it seems like at the core, it's really quite nearly there in terms of being a lot better than it currently is. And there's been a lot of near misses in terms of picking up results that could have put us perhaps around the playoff mix. But we're not quite getting over the line for whatever reason. And it looks like it's so close, but at the same time, so far away. And it's hard to take sometimes because there's been a lot of drop points we probably shouldn't have, or dominating games, but we're not dominating in a sense to win them. We're dominating them, but then also don't look like winning them. It's really, really weird. It's hard to explain, but yeah, we'll get into it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've pulled at you've sort of alluded to a couple of points there that I wanted to sort of get at. Starting with Luke Williams, he came in January, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
How have you taken to him? Obviously, things weren't great under Duff, and you had a little bit of sort of turbulence, if you like, in terms of the managerial position.
Yeah.
Williams is now in. He's been in since January. You know, he's got the opportunity. He's had a pre-season behind him, a couple of transfer windows. where does he sit with you as a fan base? Are you right behind him, or is there any sort of misgivings anywhere?
I think we've got a bit of a fickle fan base, I'll be honest with you, right? So they will go in line with the results, most of them. What you see online anyway, I think if you talk to people in person, it's a bit different, and they're happy to be patient, and they can see he's trying to do a certain way of playing, and they're right with that. You know, a lot of the Swansea fans want to pass in brand of football. It's what brought us success and to the Premier League and did us well in the first half of the time we were there as well. So it's kind of what we've always been built upon when we've been successful in recent memory. So it's called the Swansea way, and that's what they kind of want. They want that to be a consistent, I think. So when we don't have that, they get more frustrated. Luke Williams has gone back to that style of play. We do have high possession statistics, a lot more so than we had under Michael Duff. He was number 2 at Swansea under Russell Martin, who was also doing that style of football. However, there's a massive issue with our attack at the moment. We are just not creating enough chances. We are not scoring enough goals. It's dull. Quite often, it's really good and dominant up until the final third, and then there's nothing. And I've been saying it since early season, and a lot of towards the end of last season. Now this is a concern, and I've been told quite often, you know, it's early days, it's building. You know, we're going to improve over time, and I respect that, and I will give the time. But I do think the way that Duff got hounded out by some quarters of the fan base, I think it's fair to criticise where criticism is due when it comes to how we are operating going forward. And I have no issue with it being a work in progress, but we need to try and address the concerns, which for me, I'm not seeing anything to suggest it's going to improve until we get some players in January to address it potentially. So in terms of where Luke Williams is in the fan base, look, I'm not going to say he needs to be sacked at all. I don't think that's the case. He does need time. And I think we need to accept perhaps as a fan base, this is a bigger work in progress than maybe we might have thought it was. We're further away from where we perhaps thought we could be. He has brought some good players in, and they do look good. I can't quite tell you what's missing. I think it's more tactically, and that comes to my next point, where I think we need to accept maybe we brought him up from League Two. He was only in League Two briefly because he got promoted from non-league with Notts County. And maybe that's just the level that he is as the manager. He's still developing himself. He still needs to learn the lessons himself. And he's not by all means an awful manager, right? He isn't. He's, I would say, done some good work making the defence better than what it was. And his defence in Notts County was quite suspect as well. So I think he's improved there. And maybe that's where his focus has been. But he's got a massive challenge on him now of fixing whatever's wrong with our attack. And I've got my own idea of what that is. I just hope that he's got an idea as well, I guess, and that we can see improvements in the coming weeks because it's not good at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the defence and the attack because I had a quick look and you're actually the lowest or joint lowest scorers in the league, aren't you? You've only scored 8 goals, but to your credit, you've only conceded 7. So you know, even with 8 goals, you're sitting on a plus goal difference, which is absolutely better than where we are at the minute. You talked about the style of play as well. The people tend to get frustrated when you get through when you have those heavy sort of periods of possession, then you get into the final third.
Well, this
is that felt within the games?
It is, because again, I go back to it, and you know, people might not like to hear it, but I'm honest about the situation, and I think it's a fickle fan base a lot of the time. There's a lot of, it's always been the same though, right? They ask for a passing style of football. That's what they want. But unfortunately, when the passing style of football isn't at its best, it can be quite boring on the pitch, right? If you're not scoring goals and you're just keeping the ball, you get the criticisms of passing sideways and backwards. And as much as it's not always a case of that, I think that comment comes out too much for me. I don't think it's always that. We're not damaging in the final third. That is accurate, okay? So we're not getting enough shots, we're not making enough chances, and we're not scoring enough goals. So then you get them comments, oh, what's the point of having this possession? You're not doing anything with it. And I'm one of the ones who's pushing that narrative a lot, but I never necessarily said we needed to go to this style of football. For me, I think times have changed from when we did this successfully. I'm not saying you can't do it successfully. I think it's a lot harder now. I think it costs a lot more money to get the players you need in to do it. And I think there's for me, it's like, right, look at the resources we got and what's the best way that we can use them to be successful. Steve Cooper, our most successful recent manager, probably did that at the best, and we got into the playoffs twice under him while we were in the championship. Okay, so That's what my argument is. But yeah, in regards to the possession, they want that style of football, but now we're not scoring, we're not making chances. It's a problem. So like, it's hard to kind of answer your question from a perspective of consistency, because it would be a problem if they weren't trying to play that way, like McElduff, who, as much as there was issues there, he was a lot better when it came to attack. They like to say we didn't look like scoring under him, right? But the statistics are all there to see. In his first 13 matches or whatever it was, he was either on par or had scored more goals than the previous 2-3 managers, right? It's just because the play style wasn't what they wanted. There was other issues that were brought up. I feel harshly to some quarters, but like I said, he didn't kind of help himself either. So I'm not going down into that argument. But to compare it to the situation we're in now, the attack is probably the worst I've seen it since we got relegated in terms of chance creation, but we are dominating the ball quite often. If you look at the Blackburn game that we just played yesterday, 68% possession. But we only making, well, it was 2 shots on target, I think it was, for the whole game. And if you want to go in deeper, they were both from our centre-backs. So that's not good. That is not a great situation. And whether like Blackburn's game plan was to allow us to have the ball, which I believe part of it was, that's an issue because teams are happy to do that. Our game plan is built upon possession. When teams are then saying, oh, it's fine, have the ball, and they're still getting results, that's a massive problem. And the other problem I have is, again, you mentioned our defence being quite good. I think it's a bit misleading. Say we're only giving up 30% of the ball on average to opposition, or I know it's a bit lower sometimes, depends who we're playing against. But they're creating enough chances to get a goal, to get the results, to win a game. Again, how is the opposition managing to be more efficient or create more chances than us when they've got half the amount of possession? Screaming to me issues both ends of the pitch. So I think the possession stats are skewing our defence a bit and kind of taken away from. I'm not saying we've got a bad defence by any means, but I think it's half as good as the goals conceded column is suggesting. And I think if you look at the XG against, that does suggest that we are, not as good as it says. And there's been a lot of games where the other team not being so clinical has caused them issues. But yeah, we're kind of on a bit of a bad run now, 4 games without a win. I think we're kind of filtering into where we should be in the league, and that's fair. And all of these concerns that I've highlighted all season are stuff now that I think he does need to start looking at and addressing. But I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question.
Not at all.
Yeah, the possession, I can't really answer it. Some fans, they like it, but then it's a problem when you don't win games no matter what is happening on the pitch, so they're quite vocal about it when that happens.
Yeah, I'm interested listening to your talk there. I'm interested to know how you set up what sort of formation you play. Yeah, we're very similar in terms of that passing and fluidity, and we will like to play out from the back, and we'll be very intricate through the middle. And there's been times where we've switched it up, and we started the season playing as a 4. And when we beat Wayne Rooney's Plymouth on Sky, playing a 4 at the back, it was. We thought that was the way we were going to go, but things didn't transpire to sort of continue that way. And we've settled into a back 3 recently. We've not changed the way that we play. Danny Rule has his philosophy in terms of wanting to get the ball down, backline players being sort of comfortable on the ball, the midfielders being similar, showing for it, and as trying to play through the thirds, if you like. But we've changed formations a couple of times since the start of the season. What can we expect when Swansea pitch up on Tuesday night?
It's going to be a 4-3-3. It's been there all season. I'd be shocked to see it change. I think they've recruited for that now. When Luke Williams first came in, he did start with a 5, had a couple of heavy defeats, poor defensive showings, and I think he quickly changed it, and they've recruited for it since, which might be part of our issue, really, because I think at Notts County he always did a 5 and he had 2 strikers. And now he's playing with a 4-3-3. We're going to go 1 striker. And our striker is the issue where we cannot get whoever plays that position into the game. Doesn't matter who it is, they're always out of the game. And I think in a way it's leading to unfair criticism of the individual in that role, who I get comments of not being good enough and all the rest of it. But for me, when I see consistently the same theme, you can look into the data, you can see the touches that they have in the amount of passes they have on the ball in that role, and whoever's in there is having the same problem. That's a tactical issue. So we're going to set up 4-3-3. I could probably tell you the lineup. There might be one or two changes. It'll be Vigoro in goal, Timon left back, centre backs of Cabango and Darlin, Josh Key on the right. Because it's a Tuesday match, one of the wing backs might swap out for Kyle Norton. Then you'll have in the midfield, you'll have Mac Rhymes and Franco. Franco might drop out for Felton again because of midweek game. But he's a miss when he's not there. So if he doesn't start, that's good for you, I would say, because he's coming in the summer and he's been very dogged and really good in the middle of the park. Ollie Cooper will be behind the striker, I would imagine. And then I say I could tell you the lineup. We had an injury in the international break of Ji-Sung who has been starting on the left wing regularly. So we weren't quite sure who's going to replace him because he's out for 6 weeks now. We have a new signing, Bianchini, as well, who did come in for him, but it was his first start in the league. And by all accounts, he was really quite poor against Blackburn. So I'm unsure whether he will retain that slot. I would maybe hazard a guess you might see it. Azim Abdullahi out there. Liam Cullen or Vipotnik up front in the middle. And Ronald will start on the right wing. Now, we will play to go wide when we get it forward. We'll go to the wide areas. So we'll overlap the wing backs and we'll use the wingers. Ronald is probably going to be our focal point who we expect to take players on and get forward. And he's quite tricky. He's quite quick, Brazilian winger. He came in January, hit the ground running, but has since, I think, been a bit found out, or maybe the tactics have been found out. It's hard to tell at the moment. I need to see if he can come out the other side of this. I want to say slump. I think he just hasn't got the best end product. And at the moment, he's perhaps a bit under the microscope a bit more because of our attacking woes, right? But we'll go out wide, essentially, and we'll get there quite well, and we'll dominate the ball and get to these areas that look dangerous. But ultimately, you'll have one player in the box who will be the striker. So we're either putting a ball in there to try and find him, which quite often doesn't because there's 2 or 3 people marking him, and that doesn't work. Or we'll try and do things on the edge of the box, cut in with the wingers, or Ollie Cooper, who's the centre attacking midfielder, on to cut in and try and do something from outside the box, or put a cross in after they cut in. Again, same result, but it usually gets easily cleared. So that seems to be what we're doing. We seem to be only going out wide, which I think is our problem, not going through the middle. So we're not asking different questions. So the teams who are defending against us, they know how we're going to play. They know to defend the wide area as well. Or if they're going to give them up, allow us to have the ball out there, you defend in the middle because you know you've got one player trying to win a ball and cross, which often if you outmark them, it's quite difficult to do that. And we don't have a plan B really, or like switch it up, okay, so that's not working. Let's go through the middle and make them defend differently. And they're like, oh, we're caught out now. We need to adjust what we're doing. And because you've done that, maybe all of a sudden now out wide, you could be more dangerous again because you're chopping a change in. But I don't know why, for some reason, it's just not happening. And we're playing with a central attacking midfielder, but it seems intentionally that he's been asked to support out wide. When the ball's getting forward out wide, he will go kind of the side the ball is on to help play in the little triangles, keep possession and work the space and pass the ball into the box that way. But ultimately, when they get to the box, it's like they can't quite get that next stage. And yeah, it's frustrating to say the least. But that's what you're going to see, basically, when we come up.
If you just talk through the entire run, I'm going to have this clipped and sent to the Sheffield Wednesday team just to get the analysis a little bit eased in.
I mean, they probably already know all this, I would imagine. I think the last couple of games for us, the last 4 to 6 games it's been just the same thing, and that's why it's getting a bit frustrating. I think that, especially after an international break, and I wasn't able to watch the game yesterday, unfortunately, because I was working. But for me, I've been saying these things all season, but from a perspective of being constructive, right? I don't want the manager to get sacked, but I want to, Michael Duff, like I said, he got so much criticism for what he was doing. For me, what I saw then wasn't necessarily as bad as some of the problems we got now, even though it looks a bit more like you can see the direction. We are struggling a little bit more in some areas of the pitch, and that's fine. It's not a problem if you acknowledge them. Do you know what I mean? And kind of address them and say, look, we're working towards it. That's fine. I haven't got an issue with that. So I like to call them out and say what these things are. And I've seen them since the back end of last season. And on day one this season, after a full summer, a full pre-season, when you watch the first match of the season and see all of the same concerns, that's when it was like a red flag to me. Like, what have they actually been doing in the summer? I understood it at the end of last season because he came in January tried changing completely the style of play to a passing style of football. So you can kind of let things slide that if some things aren't able to be implemented within that time. But then in the summer, when the same things are there as a concern, you're like, well, hang on now. I thought you would have at least done a little bit to try and improve this. And again, we're 10 games in now, and it's the same things are there. So whereas I was being told to wait and be patient and give it 10 games and see if it's the same thing, now people are seeing it, and now people are like, you look in your WhatsApp or whatever, and you see people shouting, "Oh my God, we're just so blunt going forward." I'm like, mate, I've been saying since day one. I'm just glad everyone can now see it. I'm not asking to give criticism necessarily, but everyone needs to understand what the issue is so you can move forward. And I hope the manager can also see that as well.
Yeah. Your transfer activity, I look back, and I know you've sort of alluded to potential starting 11. Did you manage to get anybody in sort of over the summer? Have you got any marquee signings? Who's a player that, if it does click, and when it does click, whether that be Tuesday night or later on in the season, who's the player that you're going to be looking to sort of view as a talisman for you?
Yeah, there's been a few. We brought a couple of players in. I think we probably needed a few more. Our depth's not amazing, and that's where I mentioned injury earlier. As soon as one or two of them drop out, it's very difficult to know who's going to be able to step in, and whether that's a case of like knowing they'll turn up, or like you just don't trust what's behind the first 11. I think the first 11 picks itself at the moment. Few positions, there's someone that can drop in, but unfortunately, further forward you go through the pitch, you're less trusting, I guess. And it's not even as if the ones that are starting are scoring the goals, is it? So that's not a good sign. But I mentioned Ji-Sung. He's unfortunately picked up an injury, but he would have been the one that fits your description. You won't see him, but he's the one that might click into gear at some point in the season and start making these things happen if we're going to start scoring a few more goals or creating a few more chances. He is the one that looks like it at the moment when he is on the pitch. He's a bit of a live wire. He's come from South Korea. He's a nimble, lightweight winger, if you want. So he's good on the ball. He likes taking the man on, and he's not shying away from that sort of stuff. But again, it's when you get to the end product that it's just not quite there yet. He's been unlucky to not score a couple. I think he's hit the bar and one or two good saves from the keeper. So, and I think a few assists maybe he's been robbed of as well, with others not putting their chances away. But yeah, he's been the one for me that stood out, because he's only going to get better as well. He self-admittedly said he's too light for the championship. He needs to get to the gym, or he's been caught out by that difference in the league. But usually when you see comments like that, it takes him a bit longer to sort of make an impression, but he has been definitely the one that's made an impression. Franco, the other one I mentioned earlier as well, in the midfield. I hope he starts this game. Usually he's the one that gets rotated out when it's a 3-game week, so we'll see. But he's been invaluable in the middle of the park. He's allowed Matt Grimes to do what he does best alongside him, and he's kind of given something to the midfield that we were missing before. A little bit of grit, getting stuck in. He's always there to make an interception, to stick his foot in, disrupt play, a bit dogged in the middle, if you like. Kind of like a little Jack Russell. He's just always nipping at your heels. He's just there all the time, and he's been really good. He's come from Portuguese league, so he's playing in the Premier League in Portugal, so got some good experience there. And I think maybe he's going to have turned into being a bit of a bargain. I wouldn't be shocked to see him move on to bigger and better things, whether that's next year or the year after. I don't think he'll be long before he moves up, and I'm surprised that we managed to get him in really a bit of an unknown. I'm just a bit shocked that, especially in Portugal, if he didn't go to one of the bigger teams there. But one to look out for sure. And then the other one that probably stands out is the goalkeeper, Lawrence Figaro, who I do believe has been coming out quite well in the goalkeeper stats for the league. Maybe not so much clean sheets, but in terms of saving shots and how well he's dealt with the XG against him. I think that's where, again, when I said about the goals conceded being a bit misleading, a large part of it is down to his performances. So we had Carl Rushworth last year, and we thought it would be a bit tricky to replace him. Vigaro, we came in from Burnley, who he hadn't really played for a year because they signed him from either League One or League Two to be like third choice goalkeeper in the Prem. So we didn't really have a year of playing. So we thought maybe a little bit rusty at the start of the season, but he's been really good, to be fair, and can't fault him so far. So
good. Okay, shifting to Sheffield Wednesday then. Obviously, being a Swansea fan, you're probably not going to be looking out for our players, our performances week in, week out. But with us coming up, have you sort of tipped your hat, had a look, had an eye on where we are, the start of the season? Profile's a little bit higher this year with Rule, and obviously coming off the stint he did in the Euros, raised his profile a little bit. I just wondered if you were aware of where we were, had any sort of eye on any players that we've got, or sort of how we've been doing this season.
I haven't necessarily watched any of your games so much, other than one or two that I've been on Sky. I've seen a little bit of here or there, so I don't know the detail. But what I did notice is that I thought you had quite a good start to the season and you're doing okay, and maybe it's gone the same way as ours a little bit. We tailed off a little bit, so not necessarily tailed off, but let's say stabilized.
We've fluctuated.
Yeah, fluctuated. It's up and down, but in the middle of like a midfield team, I think at the moment. What I would say is, though, I'm not surprised. The back of last season, especially, I was quite impressed with the Great Escape, if you like, because I fair play. That's all I can say. I think you did an outstanding job to save you from where you were. I think it would have been a brave man to put a bet on Sheffield Wednesday to stay up at one point in the season. And I think it's credit to the manager and the players, because it took so long to get out of the relegation zone, but you did it when it mattered. But you were chipping away at it for so long, and it seemed that you were getting all these results, but someone else also always got a result that stopped you getting out. And I just feel like at some point that could be a lot for a lot of teams. That just is too much, and the momentum dies off. But you managed to get over the line somehow. So I thought it was outstanding last year. There's a couple of names that I'll mention as ones that we've perhaps taken an eye on. One of them, Jamal Lowe. I don't know if he's necessarily starting for you all the time, but obviously he was at Swansea last year. He had another spell at Swansea previously before that. So when he scored on his first game of the season, we would have been like, have we dropped the ball here? Because we apparently couldn't sign him because of wages. And then he went to you guys, and there was a few questions asked, because you don't like to see that sort of thing. I understand it's not always that black and white around finances in the Championship, but I think a lot of our fans see it a case of, well, we've been in the Premier League more recently than them. When we did a 7-year stint in a row, why are we in this financial situation where we can't sign this player, but they can, when they've just come up from League One the season before and nearly got relegated without any of the background involved? That's what fans kind of see and get frustrated over. Not that he was necessarily star player for us last year, but I've just spoke about our attacking problems. He wouldn't have done harm staying. And then you've got ex-Cardiff player Ugbo up top. So, I'm sure he would like a goal in this one. But you also can't look past Barry Bannon. He's obviously one of your, if not the main player in your team. And I think a lot of things go through him. And I believe he's been allowed to go further forward now because of some of the other players that you've got in. So perhaps a little bit more dangerous in the top end of the pitch, which he's got the quality to unlock defences when he has a good game. So, there's a couple of names there that I'd probably keep an eye on.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about our finances and the money at Sheffield Wednesday is there is never, ever, ever anything that is black and white. If there's a loophole to be found and a loophole to be had, our chairman will investigate it. So I don't know where our money has come from. We don't have any money, to be honest with you, but whatever it is that we're doing to get these players over the line. You mentioned Ugbo. I think Ugbo was the first player that we paid north of £1 million for in a hell of a long time. We paid 2.5 for him off the back of a really good loan period last year. But he's not hit the ground running. He didn't come till the end of pre-season, so I don't know if he's a few games behind everybody else. But we'd expect him to be the main man at the moment, and it just hasn't happened. Lowe does well when he's in. Seems a little bit lightweight to lead the line as a 9 in the formation that we're playing.
I don't really know what his position is. I don't personally like him up front on his own. But then at the same time, I don't necessarily think he's quick enough to be a winger. So maybe like an inside forward off a main striker is probably where he would be best suited. Yeah, I guess you're accommodating of that.
I'd absolutely agree with that. I'm not sure that we play that formation in the way that we best accommodate him. And I think
that's why we didn't keep him as well.
yeah, that's to his sort of detriment, because he did start the season well. The Plymouth game was a bit of a scapegoat when we had a little bit of a dip, scored goals in the cup, and has come into the last 2-3 games, and when he's come on has looked steady. I don't think he's a starting player for us, but I think he's going to be a solid through the season. Will be a solid sort of player off the bench, coming in for an hour here and there sort of thing. So yeah, decent addition, I think, but without sort of putting the world alight. Last couple of questions then before I'll let you go.
Yeah, it's
Luke.
fine. Go for it.
How we've talked about us Wednesday, we've talked about Swansea. Is there anybody else, and it's more of a general question, just to sort of get your opinion on where the Championship is at the moment? Who do you think are the runners and riders and the people that we'd be sort of looking or need to be looking over their shoulders as the season goes on?
Top end, I think I had Leeds down to win the league quite comfortably this season. I think Burnley have looked good from what I've seen of them. Seen a couple of times on a telly. Sunderland I've been a bit shocked at, to be honest. Not shocked. I think they actually look good now. I've seen a bit of them. I didn't expect them to be where they are. That's probably a fair point to make. Having said all this, I think a lot of the teams that are currently around the playoffs, maybe you expect them to be there. Burnley, Leeds, Sheffield, definitely. West Brom, I think if you looked at how their last season went, you shouldn't be surprised to where they are now. They've had a little bit of bad form the last couple of games, but something was definitely building there last season, because last season they shouldn't have been where they were. They had a lot of issues that they perhaps got through better than expected. And now those issues are not there anymore. They've built the foundation already. So it wouldn't shock me to see them challenging as well. Middlesbrough are the ones that have fallen off a bit more than I expected. I thought they'd maybe be a bit higher than they're 9th still, so they're not nowhere near out of it or far away. But I just thought, from what I saw start of the season and what I expected as well, especially after last season, I thought they would be pretty high up at this point. Other surprise packages, I have to say Oxford, I didn't really expect to be where they are, and Derby as well. Going to the other end of the Championship, do I mention Cardiff? I mean, they won 5-0 yesterday, but they're currently occupying relegation, and I mean, obviously that was nice for Swans fans to see, but no one wants to speak too soon because they kind of started. They're only 4 points behind us now. A couple of weeks ago, it was funny. I mean, you don't want to say too much at this point. Coventry, I think, are the one that shocking me the most. I'm really shocked to see them in 21st. We beat them away. Went 2-0 up quite comfortably. They got a goal back, which massive stroke of luck with the deflection. That changed the momentum of the game, and we saw a bit of the best of Coventry after that, managed to hold on to a win. I'm just shocked to see where they are. Like they've had some decent sales that bring some good money into the club recently and spent what I thought quite well. Manager's been stable and had a really good time there, and flirting with the playoffs, being in there once or twice. I don't know. Is he under pressure? Is he going to be there soon? It's 21st. I think that's a bad start for them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's interesting. Just before we jumped on, I had a quick look at your results over the season. We went to Coventry and won 2-1. You've drawn with Bristol City. Yeah. We drew with Bristol City. So the teams that we played are, we're knocking out similar results. It's
going to be a draw then.
It's either going to be a draw or you're going to finally find your goal scoring boots and
we'll see.
Knock 3 in. Finish us off then, Luke. Give us a quick prediction for Tuesday night. You said draw. Is that where you're going, or do you fancy yourselves?
I don't think we've scored a goal in 4 games. Just confirming that for you now. Yeah, 3 games we haven't scored. We scored right at the beginning of the game before. So if you want to do the minutes, I don't know what that adds up to, but stupid amount of time. I think it's going to be a draw, and I'd either go 0-0 or 1-1. I'd be shocked if it's any more than that. We could quite easily lose the game just as easy if you score. It's not a dead set that we will. Excuse the noise. I think someone's setting fireworks off early. I don't know if you heard that, but caught me off guard. Sorry. I'm going to say 1-1 because how many games can you go without a goal? Something's got to give in it, but I don't know if we're going to have enough to win the game. So
I'm going to put my neck on the line, and I can see us winning the game by the odd goal. 1-0.
Well, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a classic based on what you've said. I don't, from where we are, we're grinding out results at the moment, or we're grinding out performances, and every now and again we'll turn up, but we just need to get some points on the board after a very optimistic pre-season, and some good performances here or there. West Brom we beat. Coventry was a good performance, even though they're down there, and obviously Plymouth at the start of the season. But there are times where we've been absolutely abject. So I think we look at it as a game where Swansea is somebody that we could potentially go and get 3 points against, and we need that to move on to Friday and then potentially get some points on the board before the next drag of an international break. So
I would say if you look at our game right now, if you score a goal, you're probably halfway there to winning the game. And if you score 2 goals, you probably won the game.
Yeah.
I mean, if you score first, you go 1-0 up. It wouldn't shock me if that's the result. If we go 1-0 up, there's still a chance you get back into the game. We tend to, if we're going to score, it's always in the first half. Quite often, I think most of our games, other than Preston, I think earlier in the season, we scored all of our goals in the first half. And quite often then when we are playing well in the first half, which most of the games we have quite well in the first half, second half is completely different and we kind of drop off. So the subs coming on don't improve us, and quite often the other teams come back in, whether that means they get an equaliser or get a winner. It seems to be only one, but it seems to be a bit of a trend. So it wouldn't shock me what you've said there either. 2-1, I mean, it'd be disappointing from our perspective. I don't know if we conceded 2 goals in any of our games, to be honest.
You haven't. It's been you've not conceded more than a goal in a game. So there's some records to be broken on both sides, I think.
Yeah, not by pure defensive ability, mind. Bit of luck in there, trust me. Yeah. And by how easy it to score 2 goals when you've only got half the amount of passes as the opposition and half the amount of ball. Yeah. That's what it is. It's not necessarily down to us being a rigid defensive unit, for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to us both being wrong and it being a 5-4 classic that we talk about.
Look, I would take a defeat if we score 4 goals and lose. As much as everyone's going to be annoyed, I'll be there like, it's fine. They've addressed something. You know what I mean? That's fine as long as they can keep doing that part. Now let's try and just work on the defense.
Yeah. Brilliant. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure. Before I let you go, do you want to give your channel, do you want to give yourself a little bit of a plug on our socials? Where can we find
you? Can just type in Swanscast podcast, or Swanscast in YouTube is our main platform, but we do all of Spotify, all the normal podcasting areas as well, which do podcast and match previews generally. So if you want to see the other version of this, you can catch it on the channel there.
Brilliant. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. And
that's all right.
For the regular listeners, viewers, watchers, you can see all our socials down the bottom. I'm not doing the Simon, so all the social medias. We'll save that for the outro. See you later.
Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday week, bringing you football analysis.
He came in. I think he scored a goal.
Bringing you banter.
Yeah.
Bringing you responsible life hacks.
Met you wonderful souls at 10 a.m. for some shots.
The Wednesday week. 1, 2, 3, 4 live. Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there, podcasts, etc.
The Wednesday week 24-25 season. Join us.
Put on your podcast.
Brilliant. I'll shoot you over a link now then, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, mate. No worries.
Okay.
No worries.
2 seconds.
Okay.
Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday week, bringing you football analysis.
He came in. I think he scored a goal.
Bringing you banter.
Yeah.
Bringing you responsible life hacks.
Met you wonderful souls at 10 a.m. for some shots.
The Wednesday week. 1, 2, 3, 4 live. Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there, podcasts, etc.
The Wednesday week 24-25 season. Join us.
Put on your podcast.